So we need to expand our horizon and step out of our comfort zone, and that's what it is. We're technologists, we're comfortable with technology, so we need to force ourselves into that business realm, because ultimately that's what's going to make us and them successful.
This is a Security Weekly production. Security Weekly is a resource of Cyber Risk Alliance.
The Cybersecurity Collaborative, in conjunction with Cyber Reason, is proud to present CISO Stories. Each week, CISO Stories takes a deep dive on security leadership. The Cybersecurity Collaborative is a unique membership community enabling cybersecurity leaders to work together in a trusted environment. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/CSC. I am your host, Todd Fitzgerald, and this week we welcome Candy Alexander, CISO and International President of ISSA.
So I was fortunate enough to work at a very special company called Digital Equipment Corporation. So that's how I got my start. Like all of us in the profession, it was in reaction to something that happened in the environment. So we had a break-in, a certain individual that we all are very familiar with today, Kevin Mitnick, broke into Digital's network, stole the VAX-VMS version 5 source code, and lo and behold, the birth of the security professional within our company was born. So we developed some software to lock systems down, to harden systems that we know today. So they need somebody to go around the country and teach that tool, and I quickly became the poster child. So I kind of fell into security just like a lot of us who have been around a long time fell into it. Fast forward, a few years, I became the security person in the data center. So I learned a lot of stuff there, everything from, again, locking down systems to doing compliance controls to investigations, and fast forward to where I am of late, truly being at the higher end or the more mature end of our professional spectrum, being able to be a thought leader and an executive in this space. So it's been a very full and rewarding career by all means.
You're doing some work with ISSA.
I am, absolutely. So I've been an ISSA member for as long as I've had a certification. I got my CISSP back in like 1995, and as a way to get the CPEs to maintain that the certification, I joined ISSA, and I've been a member since. I've been on the International Board of Directors there for the past 19 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was that long.
Yes, it's crazy but true. And I am now very honored, and it's a privilege to serve in the capacity of International President. So I'm rather excited. Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Good. Well, thank you. So you talked in your piece about, how does the CISO get trained? Mm-hmm. Could you dive into that and share some of your experiences?
Absolutely.
Thoughts with that?
Absolutely. So as CISOs, we have a special need, right? So we've been around long enough to have picked up a lot of the technical skills and so on and so forth. And now we're at a level in our careers where we need to understand from a holistic perspective what is going to help us become successful in our job, just like everybody else in their professions. But our needs are, I feel, a lot different. So I think it's important the way we learn, right, is through networking, by conversations such as we're having here today, as well as a lot of the virtual space, the GoToMeetings, the virtual conferences and so on and so forth. So we have to obtain that information at a very fast rate and sort through what we need to apply to our job that's relevant to our daily jobs. And that does not mean unfortunately, that we can sit in a classroom environment and, have the luxury of that type of learning. So we have a very expedited learning cycle in which we need to collect that information. It makes sense in our own brains, and then how to apply it. And that has to happen very quickly. So the best way that my experiences with a lot of my colleagues in the space of executives, right, the CISO level, is to have those conversations. So peer networking is absolutely critical to us. So we can call up and say, hey, Todd, what have you seen in this space and how did you deal with that? That's how, we get that information. So one-on-one conversations, networking, going to specialized events for the executive level to, understand from a technical but yet business twisted perspective on what those threats or spins are, or so on and so forth. One thing that we haven't been good at as CISOs and executive leaders is to pick up that business common sense. A lot of us come from the perspective of being technologists, so we don't have the business expertise. We've had to learn by fire, which is a really good way, but it's a really painful way.
So how do we acquire that?
I think that we need to start exchanging and networking with the other C-suite. And we need to not be so vocal, but more listening. So, one of the things that I've been really focusing on this past year or two is understanding how we support the business. And I don't mean we support the business as in, protect the reputation. We get that. That's something every level of the career life cycle understands, from a security analyst up to CISO. So what is it? How do we do that? So really going to those business planning meetings within our organizations, understanding inherently what is the objective of the organization. If it's revenue generation, guess what? We need to not take to heart that our budgets are going to be decreased, because we're a cost center, and understand that, and then think creatively with the business leadership to have that conversation. How can we protect the organization and yet meet that need for revenue generation, if that's what that goal is? So I think other ways of doing that is taking, some side classes on business management, or, go and join professional organizations that are not technology related. So we need to expand our horizon and step out of our comfort zone. And that's what it is. We're technologists, we're comfortable with technology. So we need to force ourselves into that business realm, because ultimately that's what's going to make us and them successful.
And it seems like we're asking senior management to start to understand a little bit more about the technical environments that we're running in, and it's that, how far do each of us go?
Exactly.
It's we say learn the business. What does that mean? If we put that down into concrete terms as to, okay, if I said tomorrow, I'm going to learn the business, what sort of steps do you think that I should be pursuing to actually learn that?
All right, let me share with you a little story of one of my most recent roles as a full-time CISO within an organization. So knowing that I need to meet the business need. So I would set up a quarterly meetings with each of the business unit leaders. So I would set up the meeting, have a conversation. Okay, so what's keeping you up at night in regards to security? And they would look at me like deer in a headlight. Think about that question. So I'm now asking them to tell me what my job is. When in actuality, I should have stopped, and I did eventually sit down with them on a quarterly basis. Todd, what's your goals for the next quarter from a business perspective? So, for example, I sat down with this individual who's in charge of customer satisfaction. all right, and customer relations. So, okay, so his name is Brian. Brian, what is your critical success factors are for this quarter? And he said, well, I have to do a help desk transition. We're going to outsource the help desk. Really? Okay. So how can I work with Brian to make that a successful transition while keeping the company safe, right? Think about the customer experience in the help desk. What kind of information do they have? A lot of personal information or proprietary information about our customers. So rather than say, no, you can't do that, or, it's not, a business function I support, it is a business function I support. So looking at what kind of, vendors are they looking at for a help desk, and what kind of information are they going to be handling, what kind of information they're going to be accessing, and how can we structure that so it protects that data. As well as, let's look at the contracts, the service level agreements, what kind of security safeguards does that vendor put in place in protecting, client data. So that's what I mean, where we need to stop having the conversation of like, well, you need to make sure that you have that in a controlled environment. Well, of course they know that. But so again, change that conversation. What are you looking to accomplish from a business perspective? And then it's our jobs as translators to make that happen. So we need to listen more to what the business is doing. And then instead of making the business understand our jobs, we need to understand what it is they're looking to accomplish and support that.
I mean, it's very interesting because you turn that model around instead of saying, what are your security concerns? Because now I'm coming at you as trying to understand what can you give me? Exactly. Where when you're asking the business person to talk about their business imperative, now they're talking about them and what
yes.
they need as
yes.
a stakeholder, and you're wrapping the security around that.
Exactly right. That's the conversation we need to change. I just spoke at one of the sessions here at RSA about this problem, right? How do we talk to the businesses? And so rather than us saying we need to protect this data in this environment, we're PCI, we're this, there, that, the other. Stop talking about that to the executives. We need to say to the executives, what are the strategic goals and initiative for our business this coming year? One of the businesses that I've recently worked with, it was all about revenue generation. So revenue generation meant that there's no spend on security, and any spend on security better directly be linked to creating revenue. So what does that mean? That means that this organization collected some data that was potentially privacy related data. So guess what? Rather than spending all kinds of money to become GDPR compliant or CCPA compliant, let's look to get us out of scope. Let's, tokenize that data, or let's, look at other ways to get out of scope. Then you're not spending that money. And let's focus on what the real risk and threat is on, for example, they have an install base all over the world. So let's rather put the focus on making sure that those clients that are out in your field are not going to be a bot army. And then you'd be in the paper. So that's why it's really important to shift in the security focus and spend to support the business.
The article this podcast is based upon can be viewed in the best-selling cybersecurity leadership book, CISO Compass, Navigating Cybersecurity Leadership Challenges with Insights from Pioneers, available at Amazon.com and other booksellers.
Very good. So getting back to the knowledge piece, the CISO, I know in some of my presentations I put up these couple slides of a job description, and it shows the requirements and the qualifications and the responsibilities, and it goes on for pages.
Yes.
And I wonder, who is this person?
I'd like to meet that person. Yeah.
Right, but they've just stuck it all together. So,
yes.
So how does what does the CISO, how do they know when they have enough knowledge to adequately do the job?
That's
how do they get that knowledge?
Really good question. So first, the person that has decided that they have enough knowledge probably should retire. Because again, I've been in this for 30 years and I am learning every single day. And we as professionals should seek to learn every single day. You know, I have my daughter with me who's new in the profession, and I've always brought her up, and I tell everybody who listen to me, every situation you are in, I truly believe that we're meant to learn something from. So there's that, right? So when we're a CISO, we're in certain predicaments and situations, we're meant to learn something from that. So learning does not always come from the classrooms or from books or from, you know, talking to people, but to experience and reflect. So there's where I think a huge key to our learning. So how do we go, you know, beyond that, right? The life lesson and, you know, the, yoga, meditation, which is important. But how do we, where do we pick up that information? Again, I think it's important as, you know, folks in our senior level, or maturity level, it's going to happen through non-traditional means, through books, such as those that are written like the CISO Compass.
Well,
you know, a little plug there, but it's true. I mean, you have assimilated a collection of experience. How valuable is that? That's absolutely key. We have great publications, right? You know, that are on the websites and that we're getting feeds. It's those, again, the short bites of information that we need, and we need to not be so, presumptuous to understand we don't need that information. You should always be learning, and you can learn from every person you meet.
And I've always said to people that if they're sitting in a presentation, any presentation, even if you know that subject matter and you haven't picked up three things, you know, it may be something that's something that's new, something that is an affirmation of something that you're doing, or you know, one of those things that you're probably not paying any attention, or you're on your phone, or you know, because it's amazing how much is out there, and I've gone to presentations where I intentionally go to the presentation and I know nothing about that subject matter, and it makes you feel very uncomfortable and very vulnerable, because it's like, I'm not real sure what they're talking about here. But the more that you do that, the more things start to make sense and actually come together.
I would almost as well, I am going to suggest that learning is also to know what not to do. When you go to presentations and you don't like certain aspects or certain things about that presentation, that's learning too. Learn what is good, but also learn what is bad. So I think that's something to consider as well. So like you said, if you're at a presentation or you're at a learning opportunity and you're not comfortable and it's not striking a chord with you, stop and think about what is it that's going on that I'm not happy with, and then apply that moving forward. Make sure you don't do that. You know, I think that's just as important.
Sure. So what do you think about certifications and getting, for CISOs to continually be going after those?
Oh, so I have a very unorthodox and unpopular, I'm sure, with certain organizations, and I'm sorry to say this, opinion of certifications. I think, and so I can speak to this from a data point perspective. ISSA and ESG partnered together to do research on the profession, and we just presented at it here today at RSA. We can say that when we polled and surveyed the participants of this, they stated that hands-on training is more important than certification. So I think that, especially from a CISO perspective, that is the case. That being said, however, the other side of that coin, I am extremely respectful and appreciate some of what I call the 5 magic certifications. Number one, year after year after year of us doing the poll and the survey is CISSP, followed by CISM, followed by CompTIA Security Plus for another, level of our life cycle, career life cycle, followed by Ethical Hacker and CISA. So those are the 5 magic certifications. Beyond that, I think as well, because again, the demographics of this survey is all over the place. I think another one is we as a profession should understand what CISO certifications are available and get behind them. I know there's one or two that are really out there. I would go after those that are more mature. And yes, I think that's important, but it's not the end all. If you, like for example, I have stopped myself from playing the certification game. I have a CISSP and a CISM. That's all I'm going for. They've served me well after all these years, but I would never discredit anybody who believes that a certified CISO wouldn't be a good thing, because it is a very good thing. Just it's personal preference.
Well, as one of the co-authors of their Common Body of Knowledge, I would probably have
I respect that.
I would have to support
I respect
that as well. But there are others, and I've been involved in those other certifications as well. And I would add too that I think sometimes when people go for the certifications, it's also the learning and going through that process of the certification, not so much the letters. And I would throw in there the IAPP, the privacy certifications as well, because they're probably not coming up on a lot of the surveys because they're technically not security certifications.
Correct.
But I think in this world of privacy and security,
correct.
That's a good place to go as well.
The important thing again is it comes down to the individual and their role and their organizations. ISSA just partnered with IAPP, and I fully appreciate everything they do, and that's why I was like 100% behind that partnership. However, that being said, I don't have enough time to go after a privacy certification. I think we need to be careful there. If you're a CISO who is like heavily regulated privacy type of role, then absolutely do that. But I think the other thing is we need to be respectful and realize that we're the younger sibling of the CIO from a professional standpoint, and I think the folks in IAPP in the privacy profession, they're starting to really mature and become a very holistic profession in and of themselves. And so I think it's interesting to think about that cross-pollination between the two, but I also am very respectful when I look at the complexity of some of these regulations coming out, like GDPR. I looked at that and it's like, this is not what I want to do. So, that's where I would see my role as a CISO to, pull on board and convince the executive leadership of an organization. No joke, I am a CISO and I am not a privacy person, so if the organization is that focused, pull in a CPO, a Chief Privacy Officer.
Sure.
So, there's that.
Right. It's depending on the organization, right?
So many variables.
And whether you have both those roles.
Yes, absolutely. And again, to be dual purposed and have both of those certifications, absolutely brilliant. And I would highly admire anybody that had that. That would be a truly golden nugget in our profession.
So what final thoughts do you have around the CISO getting the right business, technical, leadership, education that they would need?
So again, we need to do a lot more outreaching to get education and knowledge through positive, being proactive, I guess. Sorry, it's been a long week. Being more proactive and searching that knowledge. So, go to understand what's going on through their peers and colleagues and then network aspect. So that's one degree of knowledge transfer. And then going out and understanding there's some phenomenal forums for executives, right? The CIO CISO exchange that happened here at RSA, as well as the ISSA, as well as many other organizations are out there servicing us. Don't be shy. Get in there. Jump into that conversation with your colleagues from around the globe. Additionally, pick up those materials such as the books and the magazines and the webinars. The traditional model of learning is not available to CISOs. And I think as long as we continue to search out what knowledge and skills we need and continue to grow, that's the secret of the success.
Well, this has been great, Candy. Lots of great tips in here to go back and think about. I could see taking all these tips that you had, putting them on a spreadsheet, and then saying, okay, I'm going to develop my 1-year plan, my 2-year plan,
Yes.
my 5-year plan is to, and actually make it happen.
Love that.
I think would be wonderful.
Love that. Brilliant.
So thank you very much for taking the
My
time
pleasure.
with us.
My
and
pleasure.
your contributions to the CISO Compass book. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you very much for the invitation. And thank you for all you do.
CyberReason is the champion for today's defenders, providing an endpoint security platform to prevent, detect, and respond to malicious operations on computers, mobile devices, servers, and the cloud. CyberReason. End cyber attacks from endpoints to the enterprise to everywhere. Learn more at cybereason.com/CISO stories.